You know what, on this channel, I'm pretty known for and famous for listing all the bad Toronto condo buildings or Toronto condo buildings that I recommend my home buyers avoid, whether it's Toronto condo buildings to avoid overall, or my most recent version of that video, bad downtown Toronto condo buildings to avoid. But I don't want to give you a bad idea of the Toronto condo market. In fact, in my 8 years of helping buyers and sellers across the Toronto condo market, obviously I've come across tons of great to amazing Toronto condos. And in today's video, let's be positive and talk about the best Toronto condo buildings. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. In this video, you're going to hear me list all the Toronto condo buildings that in my professional opinion are great to amazing. And these are all buildings that I have done business in, so whether I've sold a unit in these buildings or purchased a unit for a client. And these are buildings that in 99% of the cases, I will never hesitate to recommend to a buyer of mine, obviously provided that the location and the budgets match to my client's criteria. But before we get into the video, hello everyone, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate. If you're new to the channel, my name is Sam. I'm an active Toronto real estate agent. On this channel, we like to discuss everything having to do with the Toronto real estate market stats, market reports, these videos, buyer advice, seller advice, and so much more. So if you find any of this content enjoyable, subscribe, follow for more. As I said, let's prove the algorithm wrong. Let's prove that it's not just negative videos that do well. And lastly, you can find my contact information in the description box, whether it's with regards to any of the Toronto condos I'm going to list in today's video or any other buying or selling inquiries. Feel free to get in touch with me. You can find my contact info. There's also now a link where you can book an appointment to speak to me. Many of my clients have come from YouTube and other social media platforms, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you as well. So anyways, let's get to the list. But before we do, one key preface here, right? This is not an exhaustive list, right? Undoubtedly, once I start recording this video, I'll slap myself in the head and be like, oh my God, I forgot to mention this building or that building. So there are a couple of buildings out there that I really like that are probably not on this list, and perhaps I'll do a part 2. Secondly, I did not include condo buildings that are maybe a 7 out of 10. So good, serviceable buildings that I would still recommend, but have, you know, some issues or some catches, or maybe not suitable for most buyers out there. So these are buildings I would rank as 8 out of 10s and above. Well, let's start with the XO condos, particularly 101 and 110 Charles Street on Charles Street in downtown. Now, I discussed these condos in one of my most recent videos, everything you need to know about Charles Street condos, where I go through in depth every single condo that's on Charles Street between Jarvis and Yonge. And in that video, I mentioned that these condos, 101 and 110 Charles Street by Great Golf, are my favorite buildings on Charles Street, and I stick to that. First and foremost, the builder, Great Golf. They are, I would say, probably, my opinion, top 3 to top 5 builders working within the city of Toronto. And 101 and 110, compared to all the other buildings on Charles Street, have a perfect mixture of what you're looking for in something that's a bit new, a bit sexy, a bit luxury, but at the same time, end user friendly. So for instance, on Charles Street, you have the Casa condos, Casa 1, Casa 2, Casa 3, that are way more on the luxury side and have the really big issues that I discussed in that video with builder bankruptcy and such. But despite that, they still have good resale value. They're in demand. The people in those buildings tend to be wealthier individuals, but it's not really end user friendly. The units, the sizes, the layouts, not really end user friendly for the long run. Whereas on Charles Street, you have buildings on the other side of the spectrum, such as 88 and 80 Charles Street, which are magnificent end user friendly buildings, but they're very old and their appreciation upside is a bit limited and their style is a little bit more outdated. So 101 and 110 Charles Street, I find to be a perfect mixture of something that is fresh and sexy, but at the same time, for the modern aesthetic, you're not sacrificing end user quality and peace of mind. Particularly with these buildings, 101 and 110, I prefer 101 over 110. I found 110 to have a little bit too much wear and tear compared to 101. And the 2 bedrooms in these buildings are really good. I like the floor to ceiling windows, very open spaces. You can have occasional awkward layouts, and guess what? None of these buildings are going to be cheap, right? Some of them are going to be cheaper than others, but naturally, due to the, you know, really concept of the list, most of these buildings are going to be higher on the price points. Nonetheless, for the best Toronto condo buildings, I think 101 and 110 is a great starting off point. Here we're going to swing all the way to North York, and probably the newest project on this list. And by far, I think one of my favorite, above all, favorite buildings in the city of Toronto, which is 25 Adra Grado Way at Sheppard and Leslie. Now, 25 Adra Grado Way, I have done tons of transactions in that building. I've purchased units in that building. I've sold units in that building. It's a very young building by Tridel. That's where we're going to start with the positives. Tridel, in my opinion, is the best builder working within the city of Toronto today, bar none. And not only is this a Tridel building, and Tridel is great, but this is probably Tridel's best building in the last 5 to 8 years. I will go out on a limb and make that declaration. 25 Adra Grado Way, you start with the aesthetic, you start with the design. It looks different, almost has a step pyramid-like aesthetic. It stands out, it's different, it's backing on to a ravine. The building is the definition of luxury. When you walk into the lobby, everything from the high ceilings, to the professionalism of the concierge, to the finishes of the amenities, to the finishes of the units, you can really tell this is a value for your money building. I mean, yes, the per square foot averages in this building are high. You know, when I sold the unit back when the market was a bit hotter, we sold it at around, if my memory serves me correct, $12.50 per square foot, which at Sheppard and Leslie, you know, you're not typically supposed to be selling at that high a per square foot price. That's usually reserved for downtown and midtown. So it goes to show how valued this building is. The amenities are fantastic, management is professional, and another thing is a lot of people in this building are end users. So it's actually a building filled with really professional people, whether it's tenants or owners, but on the owner side, it tends to be older, more dignified individuals who have maybe potentially sold or freehold detached, going into retirement, and have bought into a prestigious building. And that's exactly what 25 Adra Grado Way is. Now, the cheapest units in this building will have your type of cookie cutter floor plans. But even with those, even with the beginner units that are maybe a bit cookie cutter in this building, beginner units in this building are far superior than beginner units in any other building, in my professional opinion. But once you go up in price point into the 1+1s, the bigger 1+1s, the bigger 2 bedrooms, not only you have tons of variety in terms of floor plans, but you have tons of quality as well. And one last thing I'll mention, much like 101 Charles and 110 Charles, you will always have the best building in that vicinity of Sheppard and Leslie. This building is tenfold better than any of the Concord buildings at Sheppard and Leslie, or for sure any of the buildings east of Sheppard and Leslie at Sheppard and Don Mills. There are some buildings in terms of prestige that do equal this building, maybe towards Bayview Village at Sheppard and Bayview, but they aren't as new. We're gonna stay in Bayview Village, North York, and take a look at my next building that I think is a fantastic building. Hey guys, so I intended on saying 676 Sheppard Avenue East, whereas in this video I accidentally said 662 Sheppard Avenue East. 676 Sheppard Avenue East is actually the building I intended on talking about, although 662, as we will discuss, is a sister building of 676. Which is 662 Sheppard Avenue East. Now, 662 Sheppard Avenue East is a very under the radar, very low-key building, and that's how I like them. I really do. I don't like buildings with too many amenities. I don't like buildings with too many floors. This building is a low-rise, only 8 stories, very, very minimal amenities, and maybe that's not a good mix for you, but it is the quietest of quietest buildings. I have never, ever, with no exaggeration, waited more than a minute for an elevator in this building. And that's on the high side. A minute is truly on the high side. I've never seen faster elevator service in any building in my many years of experience within the Toronto real estate market than elevator service in this building. Yes, occasionally elevators are out for maintenance. That's common. If you're going to live in a condo, you should expect maintenance to be done on the elevator or people to be moving in, moving out. And that is far and few between. For the most part, when the elevators are in service, which is the most part, 90% of the time, elevator service in this building is fantastic, and that makes a world of difference. And this building is truly a community, managed immensely well. The way the financials in this building have been managed is fantastic. It's by one of the best boutique builders in the history of the city of Toronto, in my opinion, which is Shane Bavai. He is an amazing builder who's built many great boutique condos. In fact, this 662 Sheppard Avenue East, along with 660, 650, is one major complex, different buildings, but one major kind of mini master plan community of condos that are all great. So I cannot recommend this building enough. It's fantastic, and so are its more expensive sister buildings. All right, now let's swing all the way to the west side of Toronto, particularly here at Kipling Station in Etobicoke, and talk about a cluster of buildings that I would rank as some of the best Toronto condo buildings. Let's start with 5,229 Dundas Street West and 5,231 Dundas Street West, otherwise known as the S6 and SX2. Once again, no surprise, these buildings are by who? By Tridel. Built in 2005 and I believe 2007, so around 20 and 18 years old respectively. These buildings, once again, provide you the ultimate community experience as people who are either first-time home buyers, you're looking to purchase something with space to grow roots in a community, or if you're a bit older, you're a retiree who's looking to downsize but not sacrifice the neighborhood feel. These condos, the SX1 and SX2, provide you with that value of community and neighborhood. And guess what? They're actually quite affordable. I mean, when you look at prices, they're probably some of the most affordable buildings on this list, with the exception of a couple we'll get to maybe in downtown. They are older, the maintenances are a bit higher, but more is included in the maintenance, and parking might be sometimes scarce, but the floor plans are large. You'll have a lot of living space. I mean, it's next to the GO station, very close to Kipling Station, so very convenient for commuters as well. But once again, you're not sacrificing high density. You have the community neighborhood feel while being close to transit. And I would say these condos are an exception in that, right? A lot of buildings that have the value proposition of being very close to transit, such as, you know, if we stay on the west side and compare it to the Rocket condos by Yorkdale, or the Tippett buildings by Yorkdale, you know, all those buildings that have popped up by Yorkdale and Wilson, those buildings are in some cases decent, in some cases very mediocre, and their value proposition is transit. Now, obviously in this case, it's going to depend on where you want to live and where the transit is happening, but I believe these buildings have the value proposition of being very close to the subway station, the GO station, but at the same time, you can enjoy that suburb-like feel in a condo building. The layouts are big, and some of them might be outdated. Once again, might be original, may require some work, but without a shadow of a doubt, I would say anything from the very helpful, very professional front desk and concierge to how well the actual management is running the building. Now, combining that with the affordable prices per square foot, it's going to be very difficult and hard for you to go wrong with these buildings. In the same vein, moving on to the next buildings, I would say are some of the best Toronto condo buildings in the city of Toronto. And once again, these are buildings I've had experience. I'm not purely going off of what I read online. I've either bought and sold in these buildings, or I have extensive history with these buildings, working with buyers and sellers for the last 8 years in the condo market. I would rank 15 Viking Lane and 25 Viking Lane, very close in proximity to the buildings I just discussed. And once again, no surprise here, by whom? By Tridel. 15 Viking Lane and 25 Viking Lane have much of the same value proposition at 5,229 Dundas Street West and 5,231 Dundas Street West. Once again, much of the same positives apply here. For a high rise, I mean, these are not high rises by downtown standards. They don't go to 60 stories, but they go to 30, 40 stories. These buildings, elevator wait times are very good for the amount of units on each floor and amount of elevators. Yes, it is going to be more than some of the low rises I mentioned earlier in the video, but still really decent elevator wait times for the size of the building. Very helpful, professional, and kind concierges and staff. And maybe you think, Sam, why are you emphasizing so much on the concierge and staff? Why are those some of the biggest things you mentioned? Well, a lot of people who haven't ever lived in a condo or are just getting into the condo buying process, what they don't understand is the concierge and front desk is probably going to be one of the factors that is going to impact your enjoyment of the building the most. And let me tell you why. Because in this modern day and age, where a lot of people order Uber Eats or skip the dishes, Amazon packages, booking elevators for moving in and moving out, booking the amenities, anything you need to do in the building, and just simply coming in, going every single day, you have to interact with the concierge. You have to interact with the security. You depend on the security and concierge a ton. And how professional they are, how knowledgeable they are, and how just simply polite they are will make a huge difference in how you view and how you experience the building. But once again, the same workmanship, build quality that you can expect from a premium builder such as Tridel, especially in these cases where the buildings are older, the floor plans are bigger, and the amenities are bigger as well. Continuing with the best Toronto condo buildings in the city of Toronto, in my professional opinion, let's swing all the way back to downtown, but downtown west. And let's talk about 20 Minowan Mikan Way. Now, as you guys know from this channel, I'm not a big fan of Liberty Village condos. I'm not a big fan of some little Portugal condos, a little Italy. Not really the best of the bunch, I would say, but 20 Minowan Mikan Way, as long as you're talking about Queen Street West, King Street West, it's probably one of the best buildings that is somewhat affordable. Obviously, you have a lot of mega expensive projects coming there, but as of now, 20 Minowan Mikan Way, I am nothing but impressed. And the funny thing is, 20 Minowan Mikan Way at first glance would be a building I would typically dislike. As you guys know, putting aside the location and typically the neighboring buildings that I'm not a big fan of, I'm also not a big fan of loft style or soft loft style buildings with a lot of exposed ceilings, concrete ceilings. But this is what this building is. It's it's managed very well. There's a strong sense of community in this building. And anytime in the past where there has been issues with this building, the building's management and the residents have been so quick to respond in terms of remedying these problems that may exist in this building. You see, what separates the good from the bad is not the fact that bad things happen. Bad things happen in even great buildings, right? So let's take an example of maybe a broken sprinkler system that may cause a flood. These are issues that can arise in any building, whether it's the cheapest of the cheapest built quality buildings by the worst builders to the best quality buildings by the best builders. Ultimately, it's humans occupying these buildings. Humans can go wrong and make mistakes, and those mistakes can cause massive issues for everyone in the building. So what separates the good from the bad is not bad things happening versus good things happening. It's how the building reacts, how the management reacts. And in this case, in the past, when issues have arisen in this building, the building has showed a history of being very quick to react and remedy the issues that arise. And that's where the value proposition of a properly managed building comes in. Poorly managed buildings, they let the problems fester, they cheap out, but not with great buildings. Furthermore, some of the best city views of downtown Toronto from the west side, obviously looking onto the east and the rest of downtown Toronto, can be found in this building. Now, of course, the building is close to the train tracks, so if that is a sore spot for you, I would definitely recommend maybe looking at units in this building that are not looking onto the trains or looking away from the trains. And the building is a little bit busier than the other buildings I've discussed, right? A lot of more coming and goings. Don't get me wrong, nothing near the City Place condos or other condo buildings in downtown, but still busier than some of the North York buildings I mentioned or even the Etobicoke buildings I mentioned. But still, confidently, I can say this is a great building and probably one of the best buildings in the city of Toronto. And one of the last points I'll mention is the party room in this building is one of the best party rooms I have seen in downtown Toronto for sure. Now let's swing all the way back to North York once again. Now focusing near the Yonge and Sheppard intersection. Yonge and Sheppard has tons of condos that are good, I would say, but not enough condos that I would say make the list of the best Toronto condo buildings. But one of the condo buildings here I'll surely mention is 17 Anndale. Here we're talking about a project, a building by Menkes. Once again, very close to the Yonge and Sheppard intersection, around 10 to 11 years old. And actually, I recently made a purchase in this building for a client of mine, and I fell in love with it at first glance. It's very clean. I mean, very clean. Anytime I've been there, I think I've seen two people actively working with those cleaning carts and cleaning trays, just cleaning all the time. So it's safe to say it's also managed very well. And where it's located is kind of hard to explain, but you're close to Yonge Sheppard, so a major intersection, but it's quiet. Like it's almost like a quiet residential street, Anndale, off of Yonge Street, intersecting with Sheppard, right? So you're kind of tucked away close to a major intersection, having the best of both worlds. The lobby's massive, right? The amenities, once again, in terms of the party room, the gym, very good. A lot lot of families live in this building, you know, whether they're tenants, typically families that live in this building that are tenants, they're typically maybe newcomers in Canada, but families nonetheless. And the owners obviously as well tend to be on the family side. So it's undoubtedly a very family-oriented, safe building. The only small complaint I would have about this building is at rush hour, the elevator wait times are a tad longer than you would like. But if that's the worst thing I can say about a building, it's a pretty good building. As I said, off the top of this video, right? These are not perfect buildings. You'll never find a perfect building. If you're a condo buyer after a perfect building, guess what? One of two things is gonna either happen. You're gonna buy into a building and be disappointed because it's not perfect, or you'll never actually find a building and you'll never actually buy into a building because you'll never actually find a perfect building. But this condo, amongst all the others I've mentioned, are, I would say, really good to near perfect buildings. Now let's swing all the way back to downtown Toronto, a little bit more central, and talk about another Tridel building, 10 York. Now, funny enough, I've actually mentioned in the past that I find 10 York to be a bit overrated. How can I find it to be overrated, but at the same time have it in this video of the best Toronto condo buildings? Well, a lot of people talk about 10 York as if it's like the best condo ever in the city of Toronto. And I think if that is the criteria, if that is the threshold and standard you're grading 10 York against, it's gonna fall short. I think it's not the best Toronto condo building. I think some of the buildings I've mentioned thus far, I think are superior, particularly other Tridel projects, such as one of the first buildings I mentioned, 25 Adra Grado Way, I think is superior. But at the same time, that doesn't mean it's not a really, really awesome building. It's still a great, great building. It's just not the greatest building. Before I tell you why I think it falls short of being the best building, let me tell you why it's still a really good building. First and foremost, the resale value in this building is very high. And in fact, by the way, if you want to hear me discuss this building at more length and in more detail, you can find my full-fledged review of this building. I did a full video review of 10 York. You can find it on my channel. The link is probably somewhere up there. Nonetheless, 10 York is really good in terms of resale value. Once again, managed very well. The lobby is breathtaking and astonishing, very close to the path. The workmanship is once again fantastic. It's Tridel. Build quality is great. But the reason I think it might be a little bit overrated, still great, still good enough to make this list, but a bit overrated is because sometimes the property management is a bit slow to turn on the cooling, right? It does have some heating issues. Some units can become a little too hot. And some of the floor plans and layouts for the cheapest and introductory units are a little bit disappointing, right? Those are once again for the cheapest units. When you go up the price points and the price ranges, you'll actually get very livable, very functional units and floor plans. But for the cheapest, more introductory units, not so much. Nonetheless, though, I will still recommend this building 10 times over than most of the other buildings that are very close to the Gardiner Expressway. Now let us swing all the way to the west side, southwest side of Toronto, back in Etobicoke, but this time by the water, Mimico. Now Mimico has tons of condo buildings, a lot of condo buildings. And I can make a list of the bad ones, I can make a list of the average ones, I can make a list of the great ones, and I can make a list of the best ones, and I'm going to talk about the best ones in today's video. But quickly, if you want to know more about the Mimico condo market, I did discuss it briefly with regards to the general market in that portion of Etobicoke in one of my videos where I talked about the penthouse I sold in Mimico with the greatest view and all that. So go check out that video for more discussion on the Mimico condo market. Here, let me touch on some of the condos in Mimico that I would rank as some of the best Toronto condo buildings, which are the Westlake condos, particularly Westlake Phase 1, Westlake Phase 2, and Westlake Phase 3. In terms of municipal address, 2200 Lakeshore Boulevard West, 2212 Lakeshore Boulevard, and 2220 Lakeshore Boulevard. These three buildings, the Westlake condos, the Westlake phases, are in my opinion, along with maybe some Legion Road buildings in Mimico and some Annie Craig buildings, but Annie Craig, even the best ones kind of fall short, are probably the best Mimico condo buildings that I have experience with. I mean, in terms of location, first and foremost, fantastic. I'm a huge fan of the immediate, very, very confined space of Mimico, right by the water, great for biking, great for walking, and some units have stunning lake views, like 1 in 1 million lake views and in other cases 1 in 1 million views of the city of Toronto. And not only is it close to the water, it's close to anything you really need, like a metro, a daycare, restaurants. The sound installation in these buildings are great. And by the way, if I didn't mention that, for most of these buildings, if not all these buildings, they're soundproofed very well. And once again, what makes this condo so good is all the things it's not comparing to its neighboring buildings. Go as far as east as the new buildings, the Mabel condos, maybe 1926 and 1928 Lakeshore. They share the same address in terms of having the name Lakeshore in their municipal address, but that's where the comparisons end. I mean, I was so abysmally disappointed when I visited 1926 and 1928 Lakeshore Boulevard. And these Westlake buildings, 2200, Westlake 2, Westlake 3, Westlake 1, all of them are everything all the other Lakeshore buildings try to be. And going a little bit more in detail, the 2+1 units in this building, the ones I've seen, even the 2 bedrooms, are fantastic in terms of layout and floor plan. Now let's migrate back to downtown Toronto again and take a look at probably the most affordable and cheapest buildings in this list, which are 250 and 217 Wellington, Icon 1 and Icon 2. Once again, I dare you to guess the builder here. Tridel, once again. Now, the reason these are the cheapest is because these buildings are probably the most tenant heavy of all the buildings on this list. And look, usually that's a complaint of mine against condo buildings. Whether you've worked with me personally as a buyer or seller, or you've seen my condo building reviews, all the other previous videos I mentioned, sometimes buildings are too tenant heavy, and that's actually my complaint against some buildings. In this case, the tenants in this building are very quiet, very dignified, and very professional. Airbnbs are banned and outlawed in this building amongst all the other buildings we've discussed. And it can be a little bit more on the ruckus side of things. Occasionally there will be parties, but for the most part, compared to, once again, its counterparts on Wellington, on King Street West, in City Place, in Liberty Village, in Regent Park, in Waterfront, in Bay Street, these are probably the most end-user friendly buildings for first-time home buyers who are looking for a 1 to 3 year stay, or tenants who are looking for a 1 to 3 year stay. Furthermore, it's very affordable, low price per square foot, but there's no catch. It's affordable and it's a really good building. Usually really affordable buildings are not so good. The maintenances are on the higher side, but it's all inclusive once again. It's close to nearly everything, right? It's on, King Street. And even the smallest units in this building have very functional floor plans. Now, the only complaint I would have against this building is the views. The views are not good. The views go from really bad to okay. You're not gonna have that eye-catching wow factor view in this building, except the terrace. The terrace has a fantastic view, but it's very secure. The security is great. And once again, a common theme of all the Wellington condos, and I once again did a video of everything you need to know about Wellington condos on my other social media platforms. These are probably the best Wellington condos in my professional opinion, and definitely better than Nobu condos that are coming right behind it. Next up, we're gonna refer to another builder I mentioned in this video and I like a lot, not quite Tridel level, but Great Gulf. That's right, we're gonna talk about 1 Bloor Street East. Great Gulf's magnum opus in some people's opinions. 1 Bloor Street East is probably the priciest building on this list. I would say maybe 25 Adra Grado Way is up there in terms of how expensive it is. Obviously 1 Bloor Street East is nowhere as pricey as some of the Yorkville condos, 1 St. Thomas, even some of the condos in Leaside, the new ones, or some of the St. Gabriel buildings I mentioned way earlier in the video. But it is still in the upper tier in terms of how expensive it is. And it's, in my opinion, justified. Now, some aspects of the building leave a little bit to be desired, but nonetheless, there's no doubt in my mind that Great Gulf, for the most part, knocked it out of the park with this building. High quality appliances, fantastic views, high grade building material, great connectivity to the subway. Once again, running theme, really helpful concierge and staff, immense resale value, some of the best views of the city from the north side of things, right? Looking south onto the CN Tower, the rest of Toronto, the waterfront. And keep in mind, just like 10 York I discussed, I also did a full-length video review of this building as well, so go check that out. Very well maintained, futuristic features. And once again, for the size and height of the building, the elevated wait times are great to good in my opinion. Don't get me wrong, you won't be waiting as low of a time that you would be waiting for a building that's boutique, 8 stories, loft style, soft loft style. Those buildings, well, the elevator times are gonna come much faster. But for a 50 plus 60 story building, once again, the elevator wait times are really surprisingly good. And also, just in my opinion, the exterior, I find it beautiful. And as if this video was not long enough, let's go back to Yonge and Sheppard for the next entry in the list of the best Toronto condo buildings in my professional opinion, which is 35 Bales, very close to the one I mentioned earlier in this video, which was 17 Anndale. Now we're gonna discuss 35 Bales. Once again, 35 Bales, fantastic building, a building that's very clean, maintained well, that recently actually redid their corridors. Much like 17 Anndale, this one is also by Menkes. So far for the most part, I think 80% of this list has either been Tridel, Menkes, or Great Gulf. And the building is 17 years old, but you would never know it's 17 years old if you were to walk inside the building. The only way you would find out it's 17 years old is possibly by some of the units that are a bit more outdated. Now, compared to 17 Anndale, I think the unit layouts and sizes of 17 Anndale are a bit better than 35 Bales. 35 Bales has some lower ceiling units, and some of the units are a bit more cramped. Nonetheless, though, it's still a great, fantastic option, whether you are a tenant or an owner looking to develop roots in the community of North York. In terms of location, close to the 401, close to the 404, close to Yonge and Sheppard subway station, and so much more. All right, time for some honorable mentions. Condo buildings that are really good, but not quite in the top echelon of buildings. So we're gonna go through these a little bit more quickly. Okay, we're talking about 400 Queens Quay and 410 Queens Quay, 10 Morrison, the Water Club condos at 8 York, 38 Inuzi, 70 Annie Craig, 1169 and 1171 Queen Street West, 2 Reen Drive, 6 Reen Drive, 1 Reen Drive, Toy Factory Lofts, 85 Queens Wharf, 22 East Haven, and there's tons more that are escaping my brain. And probably once again, once I start recording this video, there will be ones where I'll be like, how did I forget to mention that condo in the best list? Nonetheless, everyone, this is it for today's video. And keep in mind, these were just condos within the municipality of Toronto. There are tons of amazing condos to talk about outside of the municipality of Toronto in terms of York Region, in terms of Thornhill, Richmond Hill, Markham, in some cases, King City. And obviously we have Peel and we have Durham. So as always, this is Sam from SaberiSixRealEstate. Thanks for sticking through. If you have stuck through this video and heard me and endured my talking for the last God knows how long, feel free to subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Thank you very much, sir, for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments. As always, get in touch with me with any buying or selling inquiries. No one has their finger on the pulse of the Toronto and GTA real estate market as much as I do. So I'm looking forward to hearing from you. You can get in touch with me in the description box. Thank you, stay safe, and stay tuned. Thank you.